Hi, everyone, and welcome to MaMa Live Talks. We are so thrilled to be here this evening with John Kelly and Joe E. Jeffries. John Kelly is one of MaMa's most beloved and renowned artists. He has been around for many, many years and done incredible work at MaMa throughout his time here and beyond. And Joe is going to be speaking, John will be speaking this evening with Joe E. Jeffries, who is a fantastic drag historian, dramaturge, a professor at NYU and the New School, and does incredible work in the history of LGBTQ performance in New York, especially. I'm thrilled to have both of them here to talk about the subject of John's upcoming show, Underneath the Skin. John's show will be premiering after its acclaimed run at Skirball will be at La Mama in December 1st through 18th. So I'm going to turn it over to them. Please enjoy. We hope to see you at the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joey Jeffries. I'm here with John Kelly, and we're going to be talking about John's upcoming show here at La Mama, Underneath the Skin, which is going to be December the 1st through December the 18th. And so, John, I wanted to start by asking you, as the creator of this show, how you first came across the subject matter of this show, a person by the name of Samuel Steward.
Well, about 10 years ago, I read the book that was published by Justin Spring about Samuel Steward, which remains the definitive book about Samuel. And then that was then. And 4 years ago, I was approached by Jay Wegman, who runs NYU Skirball, wanting to commission me to make a work about Samuel Steward. And in that moment, I had to think, well, can I play Samuel Steward? Can I be compassionate and curious enough about him? And I knew right away that I could. So that was the beginning of that journey. And we did two performances in the fall of 2019. And then COVID happened. So here we are remounting the piece for La Mama.
Great. I'm here at La Mama in one of their offices with a series of portraits of you behind me. And you are in a environment that's suggesting all sorts of things about Samuel Steward. So tell us who Samuel Steward was for people who don't know who this fantastic, fascinating individual in American history is.
Okay, Samuel M. Steward was a gay novelist and tattoo artist who worked mostly in Ohio, Chicago. His dates are 1909 to 1993. He lived his life authentically as a gay man in the decades where the persecution was rampant and horrifying. And one of the things that makes him unique is that his ephemera comes down to us. So there's really this proof of his very prolific sexual identity and life, his efforts as a poet and novelist, eventually his published work as a writer of erotic literature, and maybe primarily his work as a very, very famous, perhaps the most famous tattoo artist in the United States from maybe the late 1940s up until the 1970s.
So he is. He's very multifaceted, as you say. Academic, tattoo artist, artist in all sorts of other forms, writer. But let's start with his prolific sex life for a moment. He's known for keeping something called a stud file, which I think is the first time I came across him was at the Museum of Sex early on. They had an exhibit where they exhibited the stud file. And I was like, what is this thing? And who is this person? So tell us what this stud file is.
Well, I can show you what a stud file is. This is not his stud file, but it's a fabricated stud file. So it's fashioned after his stud file, and it's a repository of typed index cards. Of course, these are dummy cards, but what he did was he notated every sexual encounter he had from like 1925 to 1980 or something in this stud file. He kept snippets of pubic hair. He was a a unique character in that way. So in a way, it was like he was retaining proof of his reality, and very belligerently so. In retrospect, maybe he just needed to put that reality into the world to prove that men like him were aiming to prevail at a time when it was nearly impossible to have an erotic life as a gay man.
And his sexual history includes, as you say, many, many people, but also many people of note, we might say, starting with Valentino, running through Lord Alfred Douglas, Rock Hudson figures in there.
Yeah.
The one that fascinates me is Thornton Wilder, the author of Our Town. But tell us a little bit about the Valentino one, because you also have an object there that is a replica of his Valentino.
Yeah. So as I'm doing this piece, I'm replicating, objects that populated his life to have them be on stage as I play this character. It's a 4-person piece, and it's episodic, and it really traces his life. I play him from age like 18 to 84 in the piece. So anyway, when he was 16, he was living in Columbus, and Valentino had been called a pink powder puff in the press. So Valentino traveled to Columbus to challenge the writer of the Pink Powder Puff editorial to a duel. The editorial writer chickened out, but a friend of Sam's worked at the hotel and called him up and said, Valentino is here. Valentino ran down there and somehow got to meet Valentino and had an erotic adventure with Rita Valentino, and kept a reliquary with some of Valentino's pubic hair inside the reliquary. So proof of that encounter. This is a facsimile, of course, but once again, he did this when he was 16 years old, and Valentino was this beautiful Italian silent screen actor who actually died a few months later at age 26 from pneumonia. But this legend, this world famous actor, Samuel Steward, found himself, got in there and made contact.
Yeah. Yeah, that was part of his thing, right? Was having this contact, this lineage, sexually with a whole string of people, like I said, Lord Alfred Douglas, and now he also had a connection to Walt Whitman, but it wasn't sexually. He touched somebody who had touched Whitman, or there was some connection there.
Yeah, I mean, part of what Sam and his classmates at the university did was they would collect autographs of famous people, like Eugene O'Neill, Sherwood Anderson, and he would approach people backstage, whatever, and get these autographs. He had an autograph book. But the thing with Whitman, this one writer, Hamlin Garland, came to the university to speak, and Samuel knew that Hamlin Garland had met Walt Whitman. And in fact, Walt Whitman had placed his hand on Hamlin Garland's head. So after Hamlin Garland's lecture, Sam went up to Hamlin Garland and said, "Can I touch your head? Because I want to be connected to Walt Whitman." And the thing with Lord Alfred Douglas he was Oscar Wilde's young lover, and really the reason that Oscar Wilde wound up being imprisoned because of Alfred Douglas's father. But anyway, he was in London. He had written to Lord Alfred Douglas, and Alfred Douglas had come down to visit me in Hove, and he went down there and he wound up having sex with Lord Alfred Douglas because he wanted to be connected to Oscar Wilde. So he was adamant about identifying and acknowledging and connecting to gay history through history, as himself being a part of that lineage.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about his academic career, because before he becomes a tattoo artist and goes into that universe, he's firmly rooted in academia. He teaches at Loyola, then goes to DePaul for a good spell, right? And is teaching all sorts of, really erudite subjects. And even just in his letters and writing, he's constantly dropping French phrases and whatnot, and Latin phrases. It's difficult reading sometimes, some of his letters. You have to kind of like go back and footnote him, check him.
Yeah. I'll talk, and I'll show some photos of it. This is young Sam. So the thing about his university jobs. During the Great Depression, the only work he could get was in these Catholic universities, which was kind of a weird thing. That's him being kind of Francophile Studley, like Genet, hoodlum. This is him in the Navy. He couldn't stay in the Navy because he couldn't tolerate gluten, so that he got done honorable discharge. But his workload at these universities was so huge that he really had very little time to write. And it really became a bit of a tragedy for him because he really couldn't. That's him being another Genet, with one of his tattoos later on. He couldn't really function as a writer as he wanted to. So that was one of the big bugaboos for him, was how do I reconcile my sustenance with my vocation? And it really wound up grounding him down, and he became very good friends with Gertrude Stein and Alice Toklas. And Gertrude Stein said, you can't teach and write, because when you're teaching, that word finding part of your brain is exhausted, and by the time you start writing, there's no words left for you to formulate. But he just kept teaching and became a major alcoholic. He got sober in like around 1949. But really, his teaching career, which was both, he was very proud of. He was a very well appreciated scholar and professor, but it also took its toll on him creatively.
Now, you mentioned the Gertrude Stein friendship, because that's remarkable. I mean, that's not a passing thing. That is a multi-year and many letters, and the letters are even published.
Yeah, I have the book right here, actually. Yeah, she died in 1946, but he published a book of his letters, Dear Sammy, and yeah, and he published. This piece really utilizes all his words from different sources, and he did publish some of his conversations with Gertrude Stein. In our piece, we have on video the great Lola Pashalinski as Gertrude Stein. I think I have a photo here of Lola. Anyway, here it is. Yeah, this is Lola as Gertrude Stein. And then this is me as older Samuel on video. But anyway, she had a profound influence on him, and he was very close with them both. And then when Stein died in 46, he remained quite close with Alice Toklas. He visited their chateau in the south of France multiple times, their apartment on Rue Christine in Paris. And Gertrude introduced him to André Gide, Jean Cocteau, Thornton Wilder, Julian Green, all these amazing people. So he became in that circle, but really on the periphery of the literary world. He never really made it into the center because he wasn't really able to make the work, although they were curious about him and liked him, he was never really able to prove himself as a writer on that level.
So he leaves academia. I mean, he gets interested in the tattooing while he's still teaching, and then they kind of discover that he's doing this. And in the 1950s, tattooing was not a reputable thing for an academic to be doing on the side, right?
Yeah.
But he does get his own tattoo, which you have recreated on the card here for this show, which is a big rose garland in the center of his chest, right, is the main tattoo. And this was also done by a major tattoo artist, his tattoo that he then learns from.
Yeah, Amund Deitzel, who was a Norwegian-born kind of great father of tattooing in the United States, in Milwaukee. Sam traveled there to learn about tattooing from him. But he started drawing in his spare time, and then the drawing led to him etching on metal. He would replicate these Jean Cocteau drawings. And then he was a supering for the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo in Chicago, and he thought, well, maybe the gondolier in the Nutcracker that he was playing should have a little anchor tattooed. And then he realized that he had been drawing, and he put two and two together, and he became fascinated by tattooing culture, its proximity to sailors and men and low life. And so he got that giant garland tattoo that he wore under his academic suit. He got a job tattooing while he was still teaching. They got wind of it, and they eventually fired him. And when he got fired, he then became a full-time tattoo artist and opened his own studio near the Great Lakes Naval Training Center in Chicago. And for years, he really prevailed as a very famous and well-respected tattoo artist.
And you yourself actually have a tattoo.
Yes, it's one tattoo. I got it in Seattle. Oh my God, in 1993. It says Dagmar, who is my female alter ego. And tattoos were illegal in New York until 1997. Nobody realizes that. From 63 to 97, they were illegal. You could get them here, but I was in Seattle with my burlesque friends and figured that's the time to get that was when I thought I'd get my tattoo in Seattle. But only one. The other ones for the show we have painted on. So it's all artifice.
So through the stud file, and tattooing for him was a very erotic thing, being with these guys and handling them, and he did see it as a kind of sexual expression, clearly. But through the tattooing, he did meet all these guys. He did have sex with some of the people he was tattooing, like barter tattoos for sex in some cases, it seems. But Kinsey, he also has a really fascinating connection to Alfred Kinsey, who does sexuality in the human male and later sexuality in the human female. And part of that is connected back through to that stud file.
Yeah, Alfred Kinsey, and they met, and I think Kinsey did an interview with Sam. But then Kinsey realized, because the Kinsey Institute was curious about tattoo culture as well. A Freudian author named Albert Parry wrote a book called Tattoo, and he was convinced that it was a sexual act, the insertion of fluids underneath the skin and all that. So Kinsey thought, with Sam Steward being so smart, erudite, and a writer, he could keep a journal of his tattoo experiences, and he did work as an unofficial collaborator with the Kinsey Institute. And also, for Samuel, it was about sexual contact, but it was also about masculine contact and revealing or getting at the sensitive side of masculine culture, which can be so, especially after World War II, so like shelled off and thwarted. Before World War II, I think it was different. Men could touch each other and not be called gay and all that. So I think it was also a way for him to experience his love and fascination for men, the male form, male energy, without necessarily also being sexual, but it was a very intimate transaction for sure.
And we were speculating a little earlier that there may well be people out there still alive and walking around with a Phil Sparrow tattoo on them, which we should explain all these various names that he goes under, right? Sam Steward, Phil Sparrow, Phil Andros, right? You want to break down the name?
Yeah, well, he had to give himself a different name when he was tattooing as he was still teaching. So Philip Sparrow, and I think it was from this like Elizabethan poem about a woman with a large bosom who would put seeds in her bosom for the sparrows to come and feed. So, and then, let me see, I have all these books here. So he wrote a book about tattooing later on in like 1990.
And he published that under Sam Steward, right?
This is Sam Steward, but he wrote a bunch of essays for a dental journal about everything called Philip Sparrow Tells. This was published after he died posthumously. And then so when the obscenity laws changed in 1966, the floodgates opened up and you could write about sexuality and without being put in prison. So he then developed a name, Phil Andros, which is a riff on the Latin philos and andros, love of men, and became a very famous author of erotic literature. I mean, these are still very famous books, and the covers are all Tom of Finland covers, but they call it the Rolls Royce of gay erotica. So he once again changed personas. So we had Samuel Steward, Philip Sparrow,
and Philip Sparrow. And then there are others. There are many others also, but those are kind of the three main names that he's known under. He also writes, I think this is maybe the last thing that he publishes, right? Is Understanding the Male Hustler.
Yes, you have that.
Samuel Steward.
I have a different cover. I like your cover. I have the kind of more modern, cartoony cover.
Yeah, and the
But
book
it's fun.
tattoo culture I've got to get to, but yeah, that's a new print.
Yeah, but he writes this book through the character of Phil Andros, who's this studly hustler, but he's also erudite and he has compassion and empathy. So he's kind of like the perfect, God male, but he's got a big heart.
So in your work, I mean, you've been working downtown since the 1980s, through the club scene, the pyramid and whatnot, and through the downtown performance scene. Remind us of the pieces that you've done here in the past at MaMa.
Gee, at MaMa, I did a solo piece called Ode to a Cube in 1988. In 1992, I did a piece called Akin Troubadour about the troubadours. I revived my Egon Schiele opus Past the Blut vs. Bitte there in 1995 and 2010. And I've also appeared in an Ellen Stewart production of Dionysius Filius Dei, Carmilla. So I've appeared at La Mama in 2 works that Ellen Stewart directed. And then I began there actually with the original Trocadero Gloxinia Ballet Company in 1986. But I first ventured to La Mama as a kid from Jersey City in 1972 when I was like really young. So I have a long history with La Mama, and it really is my home. I'm very blessed to be in the family of La Mama.
Do you remember what you first saw here at La Mama in 72?
It was the Trocadero Gloxinia Ballet at midnight. And it's funny because Ellen lived upstairs and she didn't know that they were doing these midnight shows. And she would see these people like, why are these people out in the street? And she finally realized and gave Larry her blessing. But before that, not long before that, I saw the Cockettes perform at the Anderson Theater, which was across the street, across Second Avenue. So there was something to be said about Jersey City, although for the most part I hated it, but I could get on the PATH train and wander around the East Village at age 14, which was what I was doing.
And you have also created many pieces that are based on figures from the artistic and the gay past. I mean, the Barbette piece comes to my mind done at BAM, but you want to talk to us about some of those pieces? What is the fascination? What is your drive to create these pieces that are kind of bound up with artists and other gay individuals?
Well, yeah, all of my pieces, I work through character and scenario. Some of the pieces are about actual people from the history of art or culture, and maybe just as many are fictions that I invent. And usually they tap into something that I want to explore or get out of my system. But every once in a while, I stumble across a real character like the Viennese expressionist painter Egon Schiele, the cross-dressing trapeze artist Barbette from the 1920s, Texas-born, Joni Mitchell. So, Maria Callas, I invented a character who was her daughter, Dagmar Onassis. So these are characters that I then make these epic, large pieces about that allow me to kind of embody them and infiltrate them and in a way become them. It's like almost like this happening. We reside together. It's not impersonation, it's more embodiment and role play. And like with the Joni Mitchell show, it was me as a singer more than anything. With the Barbette show, it was me as more of a dancer and a mover. The Egon Schiele show as well, it was me more as a dancer. So they tap into different aspects of my mechanism as well, And this piece is funny because I don't often use words in my work. It was the last thing I ever wanted to do was speak. But this piece is very text heavy because it's utilizing Samuel's actual words.
And it also is tapping into your skills as a visual artist.
Yeah, I've done the set design. I've animated. I did digital animations of his drawings and tattoo designs. Yeah.
Tell us about the painting that we see behind you, because that will be seen.
That up in the corner, like there. Can you see it?
Yep.
That'll be in the lobby when you walk in the theater. It's really this is one of Sam's tattoo designs that I blew up and painted on linen. So when you first walk in the theater, that'll be hanging with grommets and tie line. It's really just this piece more than anything. I'm wanting to shove it down the throat, so to speak, of people who didn't live then and really don't have an idea as to what gay men's lives were like. And they consider themselves gay men. They actually call themselves inverts in the 20s. Then it became homosexual. Then it became gay. Now everything's queer. I get it. But really, I retain the monikers that they wielded themselves when I talk about them. And it's really about reminding people or alerting people to the fact that these men were facing imprisonment. The government was going through their mail. It was horrifying. If you were in a bar and a plainclothes policeman could be outside, and if you didn't have payola, you'd get arrested. Next day, your name and address would be in the newspaper. So basically, your life would be ruined. And there was nowhere for gay men to meet each other, aside from a park, which was risky, or maybe these mafia-run bars, which is even riskier. But when you think about, if you really want to find love and companionship and your kindred spirits, you formulate ways of signaling to each other, whether it's a red tie or a green carnation. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But these men did formulate ways of prevailing because they had to. We need to love. We need to connect. And in those decades, it was quite daunting. So that's really one of the main point of this work, is to display a man that aimed to prevail in spite of all these hurdles. And once again, what makes Samuel Steward unique is the fact that all his ephemera still exists. So in a way, there's like this tangible proof of his persistence.
No, I was reading that was one of the reasons that he became involved with the ballet in Chicago, was because the theater and even the theater lobby, the auditorium, was a space that gay men could meet, because there was really no other venue that would necessarily have them. So here was kind of a focal point for them.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the cast that is joining you on stage here for this at La Mama. I know you said that Lola will be on, Lalo Pashalinski will be on video as Gertrude Stein.
Yeah.
But who do you have up there with you on stage live?
We have three other amazing performers. Huckleberry is playing multiple roles. Alvaro Gonzalez, who other name is Estato Flotante, he is playing multiple roles. And then an amazing actor, performer, singer, John William Watkins, is our third and new performer. So the three of them play sailors, hustlers, students, spinster aunts at one point, briefly, cocktail buddies at a cocktail party where it winds up turning into an orgy, and then Walt Whitman, another Walt Whitman, Oscar Wilde, and then in the final, another Walt Whitman, and then a young man because Samuel Steward died New Year's Eve 1993 at the age of 84. He was alone. He's in Oakland, and it's kind of, one wonders, such a significant night. It's a hard time to be happy when you're alone. Anyway, in the piece, that since 1993 was also the height of the AIDS horror, I have Alvaro come out in a hospital gown at the end of the piece when Sam is alone and fallen asleep in a chair, and Alvaro comes up to him and touches his head. I mean, and Alvaro has a sash on that says 1994. So Alvaro is also like a man from the AIDS ward or the New Year's baby. And then Walt Whitman comes in and Oscar Wilde comes in, and they just stand there and observe Samuel in his chair because the TV's on and it's ticking toward midnight. And then Sam doesn't make it. He dies. So it's up in the air as to how Sam died, but he did die before midnight. But the way that I've ended the piece is that I sing a song as Sam, a song called "The Kiss," which was written in the early 1970s by a singer-songwriter called Judy Sill. It's an amazing song. And as I'm singing this song in the chair, which is really the moment when Samuel is about to die, because there's a lot of video in this work, a giant video projection. There's projections of same-sex couples through history kissing. So that accompanies the song. So in a way, it's a testament to, once again, same-sex couples prevailing, finding each other, kissing through history, you know. So it's a way to kind of insert a song at the end of the piece because people want me to sing still. And it also gives it a beautiful lyrical, maybe uplifting, maybe somewhat sad, elegiac ending to the piece.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. That's gorgeous. I remember that from the Skirball presentation. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece altogether. I'm sure audience here are going to enjoy it. Once again, it is December the 1st through the 18th here at MaMa, right? World's AIDS Day, your opening day.
Yeah, well, that's our first preview, but that's a good point. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah.
So, you have also been working on a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Many pages. Are you you're saying it's not even a graphic novel? It's an art book, right? It's a
graphic narrative art book.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a piece in 2010. I did a solo performance work. I had a trapeze accident 20 years ago. So that whole saga that I went through, I wrote a story about it, turned that into a performance work. And then during COVID, I had already begun making a graphic narrative version of the performance work, like storyboarding it. I started formalizing the storyboards, and it was turning into this 10 by 10 inch, 10 by 20 inch book, you know, exhibition. But during COVID, I was really able to finish it. So it's finished, but it's on the back burner. It's all over the walls. Like I can turn my laptop around, but it's no, you can't really see. Anyway, it's I'll show you later. But yeah, I finished that, and now I'm looking for a publisher, literary agent. So when this piece closes, I will go full force trying to get this thing published because it really is a beautiful work. And I'm a visual artist, so as you said, and it really is a lot of Virgo rendering.
Yeah.
You know.
No. So anything else we should know about the piece? Audiences should be prepared for with the piece. Know about Samuel Steward or your creative process putting this together.
Just a lot of gay and queer history. I mean, in the preset, both in the lobby and in the theater, there's going to be projection while people are getting in their seats of images of persecution, entrapment, imprisonment, lobotomy, murder, Holocaust of same-sex couples all through history, interspersed with images of same-sex couples embracing. So once again, it's about horror and prevailing, horror and prevailing. But it's a setup. It's really about reminding the audience what people had gone through. Burn, you know, the word faggot comes from a piece of wood that you burn, because they used to burn, you know, queers. As I mean, so you know, those realities are something I'm displaying for the audience as a setup, as a preface, before they witness the journey of Samuel Steward from age 16 to 84. And then once again, that initial preset of persecution and embraces, there's a bookend of that, which is the end of the piece with the kissing, same-sex couples kissing. So those are my bookends.
No, that's fantastic. Well, thank you, John. We very much look forward to seeing your piece here at MaMa, December the 1st through the 18th. Everyone get on the MaMa website. You can get your tickets now. Thank you for joining us today, John.
Thank you, Joey. It's a great pleasure talking to you as usual.
Talk with you also.
Thank you.